slate.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Meeple Empire. My trusty sidekick Palmer is still MIA, so we've decided to revisit the interview process by bringing in my mentor and fellow nerd, Jill Passon. So, thank you for coming and shooting the shit with us here. As with all things that I've kind of tried to implement when we bring guests on is, first thing I like to hit on is your geek cred, your nerd credentials.
It's extensive.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your nerd game?
All right, so geek credentials are pretty extensive. As a little kid, I read comics. I was a huge X-Men fan when Jim Lee was the artist and stuff like that. And then, watched Ninja Turtles, all that stuff. And then, actually, when we moved to Rhode Island, my brother started playing Dungeons & Dragons. I was like 11. And I would just bug him all the time because I wanted to play. And so I started playing Dungeons & Dragons when I was 13. So I've been playing for 22 years. So I think it's an extensive nerd credit. And I wasn't just a player. I actually spent most of that time as a DM building this insane world.
So we have Aaron to blame for this.
Yes. And ironically, he doesn't play that much anymore. He occasionally plays, but I'm way more into it than he is. So I don't know what happened there.
So, well, generally in the show's format, we kind of touch on a few things. When I interview, I usually like to hone right in on, a point or something that we'd like to discuss or bring to the forefront. And in the case with you, and kind of with our relationship behind the scenes, we actually can hit on a couple of different fronts. Mm-hmm. Generally, we would open up with television and cinema, and as irony would have it, a film that you wrote and directed, and I was in the closet for quite a bit, just actually screened at a film festival. Yes, so why don't we talk a little bit about A Room in Cairo?
All right.
And I will be sure to link the trailer in the comments and in the description.
Okay, cool.
So, tell us a little bit about Cairo.
All right. So the logline of Room in Cairo is a CIA agent wakes up in an Egyptian hostel and tries to figure out what she needs to do with the man lying beside her. So of course I had to make it real difficult on everybody. Where there's undressing of my actors, although not fully. There's a foreign language. They all had to learn Arabic, and of course action, because I can't have a movie without a little bit of violence in it.
That's what the screen sees. Don't forget the fat guy in the closet.
Yes.
For the filming of.
Yes, James was helping grip and gaff, and then he was also taking a lot of the behind-the-scenes photos. And we were in a very, very tight room for the majority of the filming, so he spent a lot of time in the closet, which I can send you the photo of you standing there next to Jose. He was snapping photos, which most of them make it look like we were on a porn set.
Well, I am good at what I do.
But yeah, he spent a lot of time in the closet, which was actually pretty hilarious.
Well, no, it was definitely an eye-opening experience. I believe that was the first time I had the opportunity to actually see you with your directorial chops going out.
My directing bitch face.
Yeah, the directing bitch face. It's a whole new thing. But I mean, the film is done well. I mean, you've won a couple of awards with it. Mm-hmm. And like I said, you guys, if you want to give it a view, it'll be there in the comments and whatnot and the description. And love to hear some feedback. You can feel free to use as many closet jokes as you'd like. But kind of the real reason I kind of asked you to come over here is getting away from that. We would kind of go into comics and books. You've already talked about Marvel, mm-hmm. So I'm pretty sure when Palmer sees this, he's going to roll over in his grave. The DC fanboy that he is. So
what I'll say is, of recent movies, I still think Wonder Woman is one of the better comic book movies in the last 4 years. So that's a DC credit. Of course, the rest of their movies suck. So we'll see how Justice League is, but I won't go to the theater to go see that because I'm not looking forward to a movie that's half Schneider, half Whedon. I feel like it's going to be some kind of weird abomination that's not going to work. Based on the recent trailer, which looks like they're like, oh, Wonder Woman did great and everybody wants hope. Let's make the entire trailer about hope, but you can still see all the garbage Schneider's part of it. So I'm not going to see it in theaters.
Never talk film with a film person.
Yep.
No chill.
Nope.
No, so going in, kind of transcending through that, allowing Palmer to turn over in his DC loving grave, and moving right into games, which is kind of the breadth of all this. Now, I am a Dungeons and Dragons player from way back. I played with a group of my friends in my parents' basement. Transcended from that into Rifts and the Palladium books. I'm a huge Robotech fan, so I played Robotech and loved it. Got away from it from a lot of years, and it was actually you who pulled me back into this. Probably about a little over a year ago, maybe?
Yep, with Labiana.
Yeah, I have really classy characters, and I'm sure she'll love to tell you all about Lady Labiana.
She's very special now.
She's special indeed. But let's talk a little bit about that and the format you used and how you were able to accomplish that task.
Well, I think we played on Roll20, which was kind of my first outing doing that, which was kind of interesting because I always am a super prepped DM. Because I like, it's a filmmaking thing. I like to be super prepped because I know everything's going to go wrong, but I at least have this information that I can like mold into something else. Because like planning a movie is very similar to running a campaign where you'll be like, this is how I want it to go, and then everybody runs over here. It's actually one of the reasons why I don't believe in conspiracy theories, because I've tried to corral people and I know everybody does their own thing. I think I was actually watching it was commentary about like being a DM and stuff like that, and they said that like Lord of the Rings is kind of a good analogy for it, where like you have this main quest going on and then you have Merry and Pippin stealing from a farmer. And that's exactly what a player character would do. You have this giant overarching evil plot, and the players will go and they'll go steal from a farmer and then like go into a bar and start a bar fight. So it was kind of interesting in Roll20 because I have this campaign world that it's been like 15 years of running adventures in it. And I was trying to fill a hole in the narrative. That's what she said. In which a lot of that past had been talked about by the various campaigns that have been run through it, but I really had to run a campaign in that time frame, and so I tried to do that, and it was more difficult on Roll20 for everybody to go off the rails than it was on anything else, because you have your little set maps.
Challenge accepted.
Yep. You guys... It went off the rails. We started it twice, and then everything kind of fell apart. We had two players who, like, one of them didn't have a mic the whole time, and then the other person's mic died, and it just became too ridiculous. So that's the biggest thing, is I'm trying to figure out with Roll20 how to run a campaign the way I run it. Because, like I said, I plan the crap out of things, and in Roll20, I gotta kind of embrace the theater of the mind, I think, a little bit more.
Theater of the mind.
Yeah.
That's a
nerd.
It's kind of funny only because, like I said, you kind of kicked off and had got the juices going again. And honestly, I hadn't had the strong desire to do that as much as like the first time I ran into Dark Sun, the Dark Sun setting, which, again, it added all of that, gladiatorial essence to it, and I, with a bunch of my old World of Warcraft buddies, we started playing. Again, we didn't know how we were going to enjoy it. Roll20 is definitely a unique platform, but for as visual it is, the theater of the mind still needs to be a thing. Yeah,
and I think when I was trying to run it, I backed off of that, because like normally when I have like a campaign, like we'll have a map out, like I'm just running it in person, but that's maybe like 20% of the day. Like the gaming day, where in Roll20, for whatever reason, I like overly emphasized on, well, we need to be on this map, blah blah blah, and I kind of screwed it up, but I'll figure it out.
Well, I mean, like I said, in our instance, we had started out with literally Roll20. I mean, from my experience, I definitely grade it very high. It's a beautiful utility for bridging time and space. I mean, most of the people I'm playing with are Midwest, so otherwise I'd never be able to enjoy Dungeons and Dragons with them. But in our instance, we went on to Roll20. Roll20 has its own marketplace where there's a lot of things you can get for free. And, you know, their own little economy. So we picked up, it was like, I believe, Silverlight Manor, which was a quick level 1 to 5. I think it cost me $5. Yeah. We got into it with that. It had all of the tokens, all of, you know, everything was pre-constructed for you. Input your characters into it and basically go. There's a lot of and I mean, again, as a creator, you know this. There's a lot of sub-notes and things to help you guide your DM through all these, you know, the different places you need to be and the marks you need to hit. And I mean, in a manner of honestly speaking, we started on it. I think we played maybe 2 sessions by the book before I had really completely gone off the rails and added a whole new element to it. To the point where we took those characters right out of that into the starter set campaign, which is Lost Mines of Pandelver. We went into that. We played the shit out of that. And recently we were making the transition into the Storm King's Thunder campaign, which, again, for as much as you can play things by the book, I know that YouTube is a thing and people do walkthroughs of all this.
Yes, they do. So
in most of this stuff, I completely go off the rails as a DM. If you think that my characters are off the wall, you should see my dungeon mastering skills. But yeah, so I mean, this has definitely been the type of thing where it takes anybody anywhere and allows them to thrust themselves into this role-playing world.
Thrust.
You know, you knew that was coming. Thrust themselves into this you know, this role-playing world, and you can enjoy it no matter who you are, where you are, or, you know, what type of groups you have access to. Bear in mind that our initial experiences, we weren't really able to get the video conferencing in sync with everything else.
Yeah, that's, I think, the problem with my campaign was people not having either mics break or not having a mic, even though I started, it was like, make sure you have a mic. And even one of them in the group had, like, most of us were relatively close, which is kind of weird that we weren't playing together, we were playing online. But, like, one of them was like, I have, like, 4 mics, I could just drive it to you. And weeks after weeks after weeks went through, and that action never happened, because the other guy was like, oh, no, I'll get a mic, and then he just didn't. But, yeah, that definitely caused some issues, because then you have to wait for, like, everybody else is talking, and then you have to wait for the player who's typing in their response. It's just, like, the worst thing ever. Particularly when someone's a slow typer, and he was a slow typer. So, yeah, that always kind of, you have to make sure everybody's on the same page communication-wise. And then sometimes, at least when we were doing it, mic quality. I think that's the only thing. I think it's Roll20's biggest problem is not always is everybody's mic quality or, like, sound quality streamed through 100%, which might be their shitty internet, but I don't know. So I have a gig up, a gig down.
No, I mean, that's the only tough part of it. I know, you know, if when those, I think if when the conferencing and when the audio is on point, yeah, I think that really gives you that, you know, a group of people in the garage or a group of people in the basement with munchies just, you know, rocking out to some D&D. Yeah. When you take that away, it does kind of complicate some things. I mean, in the instance with my World of Warcraft players, you know, we played Warcraft for years, you know. We raided for years. We did all of these things never having that visual aesthetic of seeing each other. Mm-hmm. So just having event server open was good enough for us. Yeah. You know, we completely shut down all of the Roll20's tools.
Okay.
And just used it for the digital aspect. And then we just used the Ventrilo server. So we had our audio communication. You didn't have people fighting over each other to talk. There was no feedback if one person's mic was better than the other. Yeah. Like, that allowed us to play like we were used to playing in another game and bring it to this. But again, I mean, just having that ability is really groundbreaking in this day and age. You know, where if you go back pre the digital age, you know, if you were lucky enough to have 3 or 4 friends that wanted to come over and throw dice.
See, I never had the problem of having too few friends. Like, there were literally campaigns I was running where it was 8 or 9 players, which was ridiculous. Like, I don't know what the hell, like, because, like, what happened was, originally I was playing with, like, all my brother's friends, who are my friends, like Steve, who I've literally known for more than half my life, which is the weirdest thing ever. Like, we all played together, and then that group kind of fell apart, because there was one dumbass who he ended up being the person, like, we played at his mom's house when he lived there, and his mom was a ridiculous human being. There were some pretty hilarious stories of, like, she was diabetic, and we would always just destroy whatever snacks they had there. And my brother is a notoriously fat but skinny person. And so one day he asked for, like, she had, like, this blueberry pie, and he asked for a slice, and the kid that hosted it, he was like, well, you can have one slice, but it's my mom's diabetic blueberry pie. My brother's idea of one slice was he cut a slice out, and then he ate the rest of the fucking blueberry.
Yeah, I can fucking see Aaron doing that. I can see him doing that.
So, like, that was a large group. I think there was, like, 6 or 7 of us. I didn't ever really DM with that group. But then, like, later on, we were playing, like, at his apartment, and he was just kind of, he was a ridiculous person. So it just kind of got, once we were out of the constraints of, like, having to be polite to his mom, we no longer had to be polite to him. And I kind of,
so you were those assholes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we were awful human beings, still are. But yeah, so that kind of broke down, and then I had another group of friends. We always used to, like, LAN play Halo on the first Xbox. Like, bring literally, like, 3 Xboxes in the house.
Way back.
Yes.
Yep.
So, a couple of them already knew that I had played Dungeons & Dragons, and then I kind of forced them to start playing a world that I was crafting, and then it got ridiculous. They were all unemployed. I was going to school and working full time, so they would play 7 days a week. I would play once. They would call me at school or work and tell me, they're like, your character's about to do this, is that okay? I'd be like, no, and then they would do it anyway. So, yeah, there was always an abundance, and then, like, a friend of ours, like, he opened a game store for a couple of years. At one point, I was playing in a Legend of the Five Rings game where there was 10 players. So I've never had we have to get 3 or 4 people, but they've also gone long spans, like, after my friend's game store closed down, I didn't play Dungeons & Dragons for, like, 4 years, so.
I don't know. I have a friend I grew up with who, we don't talk anymore, which is a damn shame. But, he was, like, kind of in it to the degree that you were. I can remember when he got his first job that I can recall of, he worked for a carnival, and I believe all that money went with him from place to place as he slowly amassed this enormous collection of Dungeons and Dragons books. And, I mean, granted, he's built a world that's mind-boggling. It's all-encompassing. Playing D&D with him was always you'd lose a weekend. You'd go there, you were in it to win it. And, you came out of it, you felt like you accomplished something. He was one of the rarities, around, the group that I could play with. There was very few that would want to come and dedicate that kind of time, and, it's a damn shame. Which kind of brings us to what you're doing now. Now, you've got all of this expertise and spent this time. You've built this world.
I've wasted many years of my life, yes.
Now, you're going to bring your own, campaign setting, if you will, your world, to the marketplace of Roll20. Are you going to use Roll20 exclusively? Or?
No, I'm probably going to... My thought process is kind of using Roll20 and the DM's Guild to get... traction for it, because, like, the world is really in depth. The map actually was originally drawn by another, like, DM and I were co-DMing in the same world, so that game where they were playing 7 days a week and I was playing 1, that was in that campaign world, and I was actually running separately a game myself in that same world, and eventually the parties were supposed to merge for, like, a couple of missions and then split, but what ended up happening was he got burnt out playing Shock 7 days a week, and that party destroyed many things in the world, and actually my character ended up becoming a major villain. Because I would come and play, be like, what do they do? Like, oh, well, we burnt down your character's hometown. You participated in that, and we did this, and so my alignment slowly shifted, and eventually ended up being evil. Somehow it became a vampire. All from my chaotic good swashbuckler. So what ended up happening was he got burnt out and he just started playing my game. And basically since then, I've run a bunch of adventures. So he successfully ran one small campaign like way back in the Campaign World's history that kind of set up an item that's been something that's inflicted every single one of the campaigns in some form or fashion. So the world is entirely shaped by player action. There's NPCs that are in this campaign that were player characters in that campaign. So I kind of want to include that because I think it's really important in the campaign world to find a way. So what I'm going to be doing is to kind of introduce the world to people before I'm like, hey, I'm going to do a Kickstarter so you can give me some money so I can make my giant campaign book because that's expensive. Is do 10 adventures. There's a character my brother, of course, played because it has to be a ridiculous character. He was a bard called Dangerous Don Duffield. And in one of the adventures, to kind of prove themselves to an empire that they could actually help with this brewing war, they were sent to go clear out this tower, and Dangerous Don ended up being in control with it because the rest of the party, for whatever reason, didn't give a fuck about the tower, and they actually also abandoned Dangerous Don.
I just can't get out of the fact that his character's name is Triple D.
Yeah. Well, and there's other Duffields, like he's played other Duffields in future campaigns that take place afterwards. And there's Darius Duffield, which he actually plays in Dragon's Dogma. There was John Dylan Duffields. So they're a family, and they actually in that adventure, his character had to kill a kobold named Gimpop that was like this weird mutant that he was stronger than all the other kobolds, so they were afraid of him. So he actually liberated this tribe of kobolds by himself because the rest of the party was doing something else. And so kobolds are now a player race in my campaign because they were saved by the Duffields, and then the Duffields hired them to work at the tower, and then as they spread, because they're bards and merchants. But yeah, so basically I'm using that character as kind of a way to send the players off on little random like treasure hunting missions where he wants them to get an artifact, because that's what that family ended up doing through time, was preserving the history of the world and also items, because there's a lot of I guess like anti-magic and stuff like that ends up happening after that time frame. So they're going to be called Dangerous Don Duffield's Tall Tales of Daring Do, and it's going to be 10 of them. It's got to be ridiculous. So it's going to be, levels 1 through 10 each of the adventures, and it'll be kind of really standard, dungeon diving, but you're going to get information about the campaign world during a really big change in the world. So you'll kind of see this
So craziness. What is the name of the campaign world?
Now Moria, because it's got to be something weird. I'm actually going through all like the gods' names, like it's very in depth. Like we have a complete different deity system. I kind of actually more went with like how the Greek gods and the Egyptian gods were, because in D&D gods are more like to some degree how they are in modern times, where it's like it is this thing that's flawless in its domains. It's not very human-like and stuff like that. They don't interact. Wherein I thought like Greek mythology and Roman mythology and Egyptian mythology was really interesting because they were basically allegories for horrible human beings. Like they would do awful things to each other. They would screw around with humanity when they came down. They were like had no problem intermixing. So like that's what I did with my gods, was kind of add a lot of flaws to all of them, and a lot of their bickering and stupid stuff affects the world. So yeah, I have a whole gods list, different domains, different character backgrounds, and yeah, it's a...
Now you're going to be playtesting soon for the first...
Yeah. Well, the adventure that I want to playtest for that actually isn't even mine, but that'll be a good test of me not fucking up on Roll20.
Okay.
And then after that, I'll be playtesting the level 1 adventure for Dangerous Don's Tall Tales of Daring Do. Aaron's working on a logo for it, of course.
So have you set a timeline for yourself when
I want to release them all 1 month apart. So in 6 months, I want to be playtesting them all back to back to back to back. Take like a whole party through it.
Okay.
So that's kind of my thought process. So right now I'm drawing all the maps, figuring out what artifacts, because some of them are going to be ones that already existed in the game or were kind of talked about, and other ones are going to be stuff that I'm just making up to kind of flesh out the world a little bit more. Particularly because one of the things that my players said in a recent campaign was I always envisioned it as being like more of like an Eastern influence world, like going into Japan, China, Cambodia, India, and they were like, we had no idea that's what you were doing. So I have to figure out better ways to kind of communicate that, and I think some of the ways I'm going to do that is through these artifacts.
Excellent. Well, you'll have to definitely keep us posted, and again, we'll add all the information.
Cool.
They can contact you if there's anybody out there who wants to be involved in the play testing or what have you.
Yeah, we're going to need play testers, we're going to need artists. Like, that's the biggest thing is, like, getting good artists for both the mini 10 adventures and also the campaign book eventually, that they're good artists in regards to doing fantasy stuff, but particularly doing more, understanding Eastern armor and stuff like that. So that's kind of important.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're trying to do your due diligence and make sure that, you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's and having some level of authenticity.
Yeah, because every culture, I'm like, okay, I'm like based it on some kind of main Eastern culture, but I'm also taking like 2 or 3 things from Western culture to still make it kind of interesting. So like there's one human race that's they're called the Dags, and they're kind of like a combination of like Irish, Middle Eastern, and a little bit of like Cambodian, like all smashed together, which is really weird, but there actually are through lines that are similar to those. Like, like if you look at someone who's like Irish, they wear plaiding colors, stuff like that. Someone who's Middle Eastern, they wear head wraps and stuff like that, both men and women, and then kind of combining that together.
Nice. Well, I'm looking forward to getting my hands getting my hands dirty, bringing Labiana back to life, and
so she can wreak havoc through the world.
She'll wreak havoc, all right. She's gonna wreak a lot more than that. So I'll be sure that we put any link to your Instagram, all the information how you can contact Jill if you'd like to participate or learn more as you've kind of transcended your timeline.
Yeah, and if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, well, I have a professional Facebook, but Instagram or Twitter, just expect that it's all over the place. It's a combination of filmmaking, my dog, and political commentary, and then now there'll be gaming, a lot more linking into it. Since that's where I'm kind of also devoting my attention. So just be prepared for that. A lot of comrade photos. My dog.
Just gonna make them little fantasy outfits, and we can bring.
No, you don't dress up dogs. Halloween's the only day it's acceptable to dress up. You don't put things on animals.
Tracy's upstairs right now, like probably doing the Portuguese war dance. She dress up Charlie year round. But no, I digress. So. With that being said, look forward to seeing, more of Jill's world, and I, for one, will be lined up to play and bring my characters to life.
Excellent.
Hopefully we can get some of my World of Warcraft crowd in there.
Yeah, that'd be great.
You can see how fucked up we all are when we're together. They're still in half the time anyway, so it's all good. But...
So the average player.
Yeah. Pretty much. That's what it is. But no, so... Thank you for coming down and talking a little bit about Dungeons & Dragons and your nerddom.
No
I look
problem.
forward to seeing kind of more of your world. Wishing best of luck, even though I'm part of it, with Room of Cairo, and hoping that gets a little bit more festival love. And
well, we'll be in Long Island in mid-January playing with the Macabre Film Festival. So
excellent. Well, it was a great film. I'm a little biased, but you know.
So am I.
Yeah.
The audience always reacts at the right places, so.
You think when you get the reactions where you were trying to get those reactions, it's you hope for the best, but
basically the film festival circuit is a shit show, and you just spend a lot of money and then hope is what we're underhandedly bitching about.
So I'd like to bitch a little bit more about this off camera. So I'm JR. This is Mrs. Jill Pasone. This is Meeple Empire. Thank you guys for viewing. If you like what you see, please comment, rate, and/or subscribe, and catch you next time.